So our latest interview for the contributors to our Sonicstate compilation album is the one and only Mr. Ty Unwin. Hello, Ty.
The one and only.
Well, come on. The one. So, your piece of music with this incredible, dynamic, multi-sectional, beautifully evolving instrumental is called Freebies. Now, I suspect that the name has something to do with the creation. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, there's always a story behind it whenever I'm involved. Well, the reason is quite simple. It's the fact that when we were talking about, putting all the tracks together and could I do something, I've spent the last however many years of my life writing to commission. And the last time I actually wrote anything just for myself, just for the sake of it, was sickeningly 1997. So that's 24 years ago.
Wow.
And so everything since then has always been written to a brief, written to picture, written as a commission. There's always been an incentive, a reason to do it. And so when I thought about sitting down and just writing a piece of music again, I'm just so used to now doing it with a set of compromises or with a set of criteria that I kind of just almost needed to self-inflict to make me do it, essentially. Yeah. Because the reality is we all know that if you've got a blank sheet of paper, no reason to do it, then it's always more difficult. So I just thought, okay, well, I'll start doing a whole lot of limitations. And the limitation was going to be, because at the time I was doing a BBC series when I know that this track was needed. And so I thought, okay, I'm not going to have time to do it properly. So I'm just going to do one of my normal things of, okay, timer on, 24 hours, whatever I come up with in 24 hours, that's it. That was going to be my limitations. And then something happened in the BBC series where they basically had to put things on hold for a week. And so all of a sudden I had this window open up. And so initially I thought, okay, well, I've now got a week to do it rather than 24 hours. And then that wasn't enough as a limitation. And at exactly the same time, I saw someone post something which is thrown at me, has been thrown at me so many times over the years. Well, I could write music as good as him if I had all his gear. And it's something that anyone with, a half decent collection has been chucked at them at some stage. And I thought, generally I just thought, what, sod you, I'm going to prove a point here. And that all of a sudden was the reason to do it.
The reason.
And so what I did was I decided I could only use free software. I'm in an incredibly fortunate situation that I've got lots of hardware and huge amounts of software and sample libraries and plugins and all that kind of thing. And I just thought, no, I'm not going to use any of them. It's going to be so. I have a toolbox. Like us all, we all have our own tricks. We all have our own stuff that we turn to. It's our comfort blanket. And I thought, no, blank canvas. I'm going to start using plugins with plugins I've never used because they're free. Things with sample libraries that I've never used just because they're free and I've just never really looked at them. Everything had to be completely free. And initially, I was going to use a sequencer that was completely free. At that stage, when I realized I still only had a week, I ended up having 4 days to do it. That was just too much. So what I said was, okay, I'm going to use Cubase, but only use Cubase plugins included with it. And as it turned out, I only used a handful of those. And then free sample libraries, and which we'll come on to in a second, a couple of free VSTs. And that was it. No mastering, no fancy, nothing fancy. It was all had to be free. And the other reason is because, as you know, and I don't know if anyone else knows, but because I'm in the middle of doing a complete studio refurb, everything had to be done on literally the most stripped out system. I'm sitting in front of it now. I've basically got one laptop and a few controllers and one keyboard, one laptop. And that's it. And no external hard drives, nothing. And so all of those limitations came together. So the reason it's called Freebies is the fact that everything on it is essentially a freebie.
Brilliant. So, well, I mean, I guess what everyone's going to be dying to know is which
Which
freebies
freebies?
did you use?
Very simple. It's really simple. In terms of VSTs, the only VSTs that are on that is essentially the sub bass, and the sub bass was made on Cherry Audio's on the MG1. You know, the whole Radio Shack,
Radio Shack,
yeah,
Moog, so,
that Moog thing, yeah. So all the sub bass done on there,
nice.
and there's a couple of wishy pad sounds that are done on Podolsky, the He Podolsky,
Nice.
which again just a beautiful freebie. Yeah. So there's those two, and outside of that, everything else is Spitfire Audio, their libraries. And it's the labs from the labs. So, and the reason I went for labs is the fact that all my entire setup, sample wise, is all done on Contact. But of course, Contact you have to buy. So I couldn't use any Contact libraries anyway. So all the amazing libraries on things like Piano Book and that kind of thing, I couldn't use any of them because Contact as an entity is not free. Whereas with labs, Spitfire use their own library. And it's totally free. So the first thing I had to do was, the first thing I do is I'm a composer, and so for me it all gets planned in my head in terms of the structure. I mean, when you said about the structure, essentially, I spent years training how to write classical music. So all that this really is structurally, it's like writing a piece of classical music. And then the thing was to form the palette. Because for me, before I start any project, whether it's a commission or whatever, I spend a good chunk of time choosing the palette of sounds that I'm going to work with. So I literally went through Spitfire Labs and looked at every single library to see what was going to form my palette.
So that's interesting. Almost like an artist choosing a range of colors to use on a painting. You were then coming up with some sort of musical idea and then picking the right paints,
Absolutely.
if you will.
When you write music in the way that I write music, you've hit the nail on the head. It is exactly like painting. It's exactly like painting. And I mean, the way that I view music anyway is like painting. I mean, I've got some friends who they basically, their idea of painting is they throw every color onto the wall. And so basically they have hundreds of little bits of tracks, and then they basically peel away bit by bit so the picture becomes exposed. I'm completely opposite of that. I sit there with nothing, and all I've done over the years is learn the ability to know when, if I'm adding this to that and adding that to that, okay, stop now. And then
before it all turns brown.
Exactly. No, exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah. In more ways than one. Yeah. And so you get to that point, and I have to say that just takes experience to know when to stop. That's the art of it, is know when to stop. And what I then like to do is, especially in this piece, is then contrast that with those bits where there's hardly anything happening at all. I mean, a lot of this piece is, it's all measuring at like kind of minus 40 dB because nothing's there. And then contrasting that with the louder sections, the kind of just as a contrast, really.
So in terms of then the dynamic range is, as you mentioned there, is pretty large in the song. Are you, when you're composing for television, are dynamic concerns something, is there like a level that's too quiet and a level that's too hot? I mean, how do you gauge dynamics within that sphere?
I mean, the phrase "depends" is, it's overused, but it's absolutely true. The main thing is when you're writing when you're doing TV and film stuff, it's knowing that you're not the shining star. Basically, you are just you're part of the riddle, and you're complementing what's going on screen. So you have to, when you're doing, kind of writing for TV and film, you basically write around the most important thing, which is normally the dialogue or the voiceover, or, you are a secondary act, basically. You're supporting what's there. And so within that, you have to watch dynamics for the simple reason that, if you've got a voiceover or a dialogue going on, you can't suddenly just go, do you know what, sod it, I'm going to have a loud bit. It's just sit there in the middle of talking. You just go, no, get the guitar
yeah, God,
no,
this is more
like
important.
that. Yeah, exactly. Listen to me. So everything you're doing is kind of complementing what's on there. So you have to be aware of dynamics constantly. And I think the nice thing about when you're doing like this, the whole point of me, as I said, this is the first piece in 24 years where I literally have just gone, look at me. And ironically, look at me using lots of free software and sounding nothing like I normally sound. But hey, but it's so having that chance to just go, do you know what, sod it, I'm just going to have a loud bit now. So I kind of, that became, I think that almost became the point of the piece, if that makes sense. I think that it is the dynamics, the things that make it for me are the dynamics, which became a feature, the areas where there was just literally almost nothing happening and it was all textural, and the lo-fi component. And the lo-fi component actually came essentially by accident, and it was because as much as the Spitfire Labs libraries are great, and they are fantastic, I don't want to say vanilla, but I just wanted to add personality to them. And so I normally have a whole stream of plugins and tricks that I apply that automatically turn everything into sounding like me, because most of the stuff, it does. Most of the stuff I normally do is the kind of stuff that you could watch something on TV, and all the people that know my stuff will literally listen to it for 10 seconds and just go, oh God, it's Ty again. And it's because it sounds like me. I didn't have any of those tricks. I didn't have any of that. So I was trying to add personality in lots of different ways. And I started using bit crushing and what's the plugin where it basically does the vinyl noise, whatever it's called. Sort of. Grungealizer or something like that, yeah. And that, but what I fell in love with was the fact of completely misusing that. So if you actually listen to the piano, for example, it's all a bit wobbly. But it's got a lot of vinyl noise, and then a really extreme gate, but used in a completely the wrong way. If it's almost like that. If you had book one on how not to use a gate, it's the first page, because I had the threshold set really at the wrong place, so that some notes you'd basically get the decay of the piano with the vinyl. And then it suddenly cut off. There was no release. It suddenly cut off. And the best part about it was then, when there was then a wrong crackle, a louder crackle, it would suddenly kick back in again for half a second and then fall away again. And there's all these bits where the decay of the piano is basically going, duh.
Yeah.
In other words, the stuff you never want. And of course, in my screwed up head, I'm there going, yes, that's what we want.
Bring it on.
and that's what I did with lots of stuff. So, for example, the one thing that Spitfire Labs isn't great for is drums and percussion. And so, of course, because I'm determined that I was going to follow this through, and I was only going to use very limited stuff. So they have their one drum kit, and I'm there going, well, as it turned out, the drum kit sounds exactly how I don't want the drum kit to sound. So it just took everything I had to just with envelope shapers, just really massive tuning, bit crushers, rotary effects, everything to try and shape the drums, not to make them sound particularly how I want, but to make them sound manipulated and distorted, right. And and I think the one thing I learned more than anything else out of all of this is, I've said for years that limitation is a good thing, and I still absolutely stand by it. Limitation is a fantastic thing. And I know for a fact that in my box of tricks, if I'd used my normal box of tricks, I would never have written this piece. No, I don't think any of it would have existed how it exists.
Right.
None of it. Because it was the limitations were making me think outside the box. Whereas I'm so used to doing the stuff with all of my tricks. I know that if I want that interesting drum sound, I put this plug on, I do this, I do that, and it sounds like me. Whereas with this, I had none of that.
Yeah.
So
It must have been very tempting at times, knowing that you've got them there and just going, stay that hand. You're committed to this.
Well, you're absolutely right. And I think the funny part about it was, so there were a couple of friends that I was, kind of talking to over the few days that I was doing this piece. And of course they were going, oh, sod it. Just, no one's going to know. Just put, and I'm like, no. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this.
Yes.
But I do have to say that the day after I switched this off, and I went back to this BBC series I was doing the next day, where I suddenly had access to all my normal libraries and my normal thing. I swear I was hugging the keyboard going, I love you. Welcome back. I've missed you. It's actually genuinely made me realize how lucky I am to have access to some of these, kind of
nice,
but at the same time, I like the piece for what it is. I don't love, if I'm totally honest with you, I don't love the piece by any stretch, but I like the piece for what it is. I like the fact it exists, but what I cannot wait to do when I get chance is I want to go back and revisit it and put all the plugins that I really want to, and use all the libraries that I really want to use. And do you know what? I bet you any money it doesn't. I bet you any money it doesn't sound as good. I bet you any money it loses. I bet you any money it loses what's good about it. But I'm going to give it a go.
Yeah, that would be interesting to hear. I'm curious about the actual arrangement then, and how much of that you had planned then. So it's got like some sort of narrative to it in terms of the shape. Did you have that mapped out then as an arrangement? Did you know where you wanted it to go, and how do you approach that side of things?
Yeah, I always kind of have a rough idea where I want things to go, and obviously when things start developing, and then you'll change it and start going, okay, well, I was going to have it going on for 8 bars there, but do you know what? I'm bored after 4, so you cut it down. But in terms of an overall, when I was taught composition, one of the first things I basically learned was I basically draw it. I sketch it out as a drawing, basically, in terms of whether that be harmonically or dynamically or whatever. And it's almost becomes kind of like a skyline, essentially. So I knew where those loud bits were going to happen. I knew where certain the theme. I mean, for God's sake, it's only got one theme and it's only 4 notes or something. It's not exactly, it's not complicated. And I knew when those themes. I knew that when those themes were going to be coming back, and where they were going to lead to. The funny thing about it, though, is I got to the end. So basically, when it builds to the third, is it? I can't remember. I think it's the third time when it goes loud again, and it does it twice the length. It was meant to end there. It was meant to stop and cut off. And so it was only meant to, I mean, it drags on. It was only meant to be 7 minutes or 7.5 minutes or something. And then it was meant to stop at the loud bit. And I actually sent it to, kind of a couple of friends going, no, I've done it, it's fine. I'm moving on now. And when I sent it to them, I just kept listening back to it going, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like it's any, although in my plan, that's how I wanted it. It didn't work. Right. So you either at that point just get stubborn and just for the sake of it go, no, this is what I wanted. That's it. But of course you don't. So I went back, but the problem was there were so many random bits. This is the thing with this, because it was using all those lo-fi effects that were quite random. They were quite aleatoric. So when I did it, I did 3 passes of the mix and I would choose this bit here because that's got that one bit of piano decay gated noise that wasn't in that mix. There were lots of aleatoric bits that you were never going to get the same thing every time you played. It'd be slightly different. And then the thought of going in and doing all that again, I just thought, do you know what? I can't be bothered. So the end bit, I shouldn't really tell you this. So the end bit, I just thought, sod it. So that became what was there right up to the loud bit at the end was the piece. And then all I did was go in and revisited the first 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes, whatever it is, changed a few notes, made it feel more end, changed the octave of the piano bits, and essentially just recorded the end minute and a half, 2 minutes, and then stuck that on, literally just edited that on at the end, crossfaded them, stuck that on at the end. And even when I did that, I'm there going, oh, it needs a bit something else. So all I did then was take the end of the track and reversed it, completely random where the reversed piano notes were going to go, moved it around a bit until it kind of slotted in harmonically. And even then I'm thinking, no. So then I took the end bit and tuned it down an octave and just faded it in. So if you actually look at the end section on the, kind of when I recorded the whole thing, the end section is basically just 4 audio tracks, which are all reversed, that section reversed, tuned down an octave, kind of some dodgy edits in, deliberately dodgy edits to kind of get the effect. And that bolted on at the end, it kind of then just hung together better.
Right. Feel like it was a bit more bookended in a way, sort of.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, arc form is one of those. Again, when you're studying composition, arc form is one of those. Yeah, arc form is the one thing that you're always taught to. If you don't know where to go, arc form's the way forward, because it always gives the listener a reference point, and they kind of think, oh yeah, I know where I am now. And all you're really doing, if you look at a lot of minimalist stuff, it's very arc form. That's the first thing. And so, having tried to be a clever arsehole and do my fancy skyline with this build, even when it got to that, I'm there going, nah, do you know what? Stick an arc form. So
nice. Yeah. So I mean, because you mostly work to image, then for this piece, what did you do instead of having that image? Were you trying to kind of visualize something? Were you drawing upon memories, or were you letting the sounds dictate the mood?
I think it was more the sounds, actually. I mean, I have to say it was nice not, because it's like everything. It's like I didn't want to do a busman's holiday. I didn't want to. Bearing in mind, I spent all of my life writing to picture, and someone's now given me an opportunity to write a piece not to picture. It would have been a slightly bonkers for me to go, well, I'll just imagine in my head what the pictures are, because you're just thinking, get over yourself. Just write a piece of music as a piece of music, which I haven't done for so long. And I have to say there were certain parts within these few days where I was thinking, God, can I actually just write a piece of music anymore? Or do I need reference points? Do I need, kind of that? But then I always, I basically improvise a lot. So I just kind of play. And whenever I had those moments of, I just don't know what to, where to go with this, something would always it just happens, and it always just falls into place. And, but no, I know what you mean about the visual stuff, but I so do it on a day-to-day basis. No, with this, I think it was actually during those 4 days, if I'm totally honest with you, I was so fed up with the BBC project and the reasons why I had this hole that I was having to deal with, the reason I had this hole and the stuff that was going on. I was just really fed up. I'm trying to watch my language here. I was really, really effed off. But I was really so, and I think actually you can actually tell that in a lot of it, because I think the first bit is, quite beautiful, and there's lots of suspended fourths, and there's, kind of this kind of wash sound. And then it kind of kicks in with the theme, which is switching between major and minor, and, kind of it's in D major 1 minute, and then literally the next bar it's in D minor. And you don't normally do that kind of thing. And that's kind of me going, do you know what? D major, yeah, D minor, a bit like that. And then when it gets to the loud bit suddenly coming in, that's me turning around and screaming at the director going, I don't want! And then it's me just kind of then, as everyone knows what I'm like when I have a rant, and then I just kind of calm down again. And it's suddenly like, kind of, okay, it's not so bad. It's fine. Okay. I honestly think if you got a psychologist in to actually analyze this, I'd be put away, because it's quite a screwed up piece of music from that point of view. But the reality is, and what I like to, is that at the end of the day, I mean, Gaz, you know me. I'm actually a calm, collected, level kind of person. And when I have my rants, they literally last for 2 minutes and then they're over and that's it. And I kind of see this piece of music as me, but the overall thing is that it's all very calm, very chilled, very relaxed, with a few moments of madness in the middle.
So technically then, what percentage of the notes that we hear were played in, and what percentage was sort of maybe piano roll, and how?
Oh my God!
What sort of balance?
100% played in.
100% played in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a pianist, so piano roll doesn't. The only reason piano roll exists in my world is if I basically just play it in wrong and I can't be bothered to play it again. The reality is 99% of the time, if I play it badly, I'll just play it in again.
Just play it again.
It's only if I play something that, for example, the main piano bit in the intro. I played it, and I actually didn't play the notes I actually wanted in my head, really. I made a bit of a boo-boo. And at one stage, I just kind of went in and went, oh, it's got a certain feel about it, because the timing was, it was slightly off. It was slightly, a bit wonky. And normally I just go, I'll play it again. And then I just thought, you know what, if I played that again, because I was kind of playing blind, because a lot of the stuff I do in the dark, I think I've told you this before. So I knew if I played that in blind again, I wouldn't play it the same. So I thought, no, I'm going to keep that. And all I did was go, I'm going to move the F sharp to a G. That was it. That was my piano roll input. The rest of it, it's all just played. I mean, and all the rhythmic bits, most of it isn't quantized. The quantized elements that I really liked were I was using chopper on Spitfire Labs. They have, I think it's called London Atmos or something. So when those bits of talking that you can hear and the bits of noise and whatever, that's basically an Atmos track that I then stuck in Cubase. There's a plugin called Chopper, and all it basically does is it basically just chops the audio with whatever audio into whatever waveform you like. And so I was using it on Square, and it was basically, it's just like good old fashioned gating effect. It was triggered gating, essentially. But I was starting to put that on random things. Like there's a lot of backwards bits. I don't know whether you noticed those, but all the way through there's lots of backwards loops, and all they are percussion tracks, the same percussion tracks, but then I've reversed them and completely isolated all the EQs. So it's the same rhythm track, it's the same drum track that I've played. I'd then render it, reverse it, put one so that it's got a kind of a low cut filter at like 5K, and then I do another one so we've got a low pass filter that cuts in at kind of 200 hertz or something. And then I'd start sticking those through. One would go through Chopper with 16ths, and one would go through Chopper with 8ths. And the reality is, when you're doing this kind of stuff, you never really quite know whether it's going to sound amazing or crap. And then you just go into the mode where you're there going, yeah, that works there. And the other thing is, I hate the idea of things just starting at the beginning and running. That's why there's all the different sections. So there's all these little elements that, I mean, some of my favorite bits, as it turns out, they only happen for like one bar in the entire piece. They're my favorite bits, and I sit there, and it's very tempting to go, oh, I love this bit, I'll make this drag on for 8 bars. But it's knowing that it's having the conviction to just go, no, it's going to last for 1 bar. That becomes my favorite bit. It's a beautiful effect, because it's like anything. The way I view it, it's like sweets or ice cream or whatever. If I had my way, I'd just eat sweets and ice cream every day of the week, and that's all I'd eat. And I'd be even bigger than the fat oaf that I am. But kind of that, it doesn't work like that, because you and I both know if you only have the nice stuff, it has no relevance. It has nothing. You have nothing to relate.
You have to have something savoury in there as well, don't you?
Absolutely. So for me, I'm very aware that you can't have all the beautiful stuff. The only way that I did do that is I went through a stage when I was finding my voice back when I was a student, And I developed this kind of I didn't develop anything. I found my own way of dealing with harmony. And it was my favorite composer at the time was Sergei Rachmaninoff. And I basically analyzed, though the thing is about Rachmaninoff and all of those kind of late romantic composers is they build up to a moment, and it's a build, and then you get a release. And when you get the release, this very kind of small harmony suddenly just opens up, and you have this big, rich, harmonic, beautiful series of chords with the most amazing chord sequences. And then it goes back to, you've had your moment. Now it's going to go back to the rest of the piece. And I just had this brainwave for going, how about you only take the harmonic elements of these big moments where you have these huge, rich chords and base all of your music around just those rich harmonic moments. Surely that means that everyone will be on a sugar high permanently. So all of these huge, rich chords that should only happen a few, two or three times in a piece and should be quite short. I would drag these rich harmonies out for I used to write these orchestral pieces that were just these beautiful. I can't even show you my composition teacher at the time. When I very first started writing music like this, used to basically, when it got to certain harmonic changes, certain chord changes, my composition teacher used to make very rude gestures involving having fun time with himself, and it was fantastic to watch your own lecturer making these, because he could see that every chord change. You know, when you have a piece of music, you get that moment when you have just that moment where you go, "Oh my God, that's beautiful." Okay.
Yeah.
Every chord change was one of those beautiful moments, and that's where the problem started, because
that's being a bit like the kind of makeup, the perfume counter in a department store where it's just
exactly.
too much.
And what I soon realized was, the moment you had this for ages, the moment you then went back to the most basic, fundamental chord ever, that suddenly became the moment. So that suddenly now became the moment that was special. And the simpler it was, the more special it was. And all the rich stuff, it was a complete inverse of what music normally is. And I was very smug and very clever, and and I have to say, when I first started in TV, I was still writing with this kind of harmonic language, and it was new, it was different, and everyone really, they took to it. But it's one of those things that you kind of then get to, you just okay, it's like everything. You get sick of it. You do it too much, and it became my entire vocabulary was all about this rich harmony, and I just got bored of it. And so I have to say, the way I write now is almost the opposite of that. I mean, there's so much stuff at the moment that I write that, there's hardly any chord changes in it at all. I mean, even with this, there's odd moments where there's a few rich chords, but most of it, I mean, for Christ's sake, it's just all based on a D root bass, and there's a few,
Yeah. But I think one of my favorite elements of your song here, though, is where you've got the very simple, like almost like 2-note melody, but then you subtly change the harmony, and then the melody subtly changes, still kind of going between the two notes, but the harmony kind of makes it develop and change. And I thought that was a really beautiful, beautiful part of the music.
This is the moment where I do just go, do you know what? That's just what I do. It's that kind of, we all have the things that we just do and don't think about.
Right.
And it's that kind of subtlety in very simple melodies, just what I do. I mean, my old piano teacher said the other day, we were talking, he totally went, yeah, because melody is not really your thing, is it? As if, and most people are meant to be insulted because, melody's not really thing. And I'm there going, do you know what? No, melody's not really my thing. I mean, I love very, very simple, close step melody. And for me, the richness and the clever stuff is all in the the harmonies around it, and the textural stuff. The thing is about this entire piece is, let's be honest, I mean, 90% of it is just textural. It's if you were going to analyze this from a harmonic point of view or a melodic point of view, you're in for a very, very short lesson in analysis, because within 2 listens, you've got it. Whereas the interesting things for me, it's all the clever stuff underneath in terms of texture. And it's, that's where all the clever stuff is for me. It's all about the texture and the production techniques that's what keeps it interesting. And that's what I hope. I mean, the only thing I can say about this piece is, and the few people that have heard this, because hardly anyone's really heard it, really, but the few people that have heard it, keep saying it's something that every time you listen to it, you hear something new. You hear a new something.
100%. Yeah.
You hear something new that you're thinking, "Well, I didn't hear this last time." That's my idea of the clever crap that goes on underneath, because that's what I find interesting. Because when I listen to a piece of music, that's what I want when I listen to a piece of music.
So, who are your contemporary influences, Ty? Whose music really sort of interests you at the moment?
To be fair, a lot of the stuff I listen to is. I have to be honest with you. Music for me, is not great at the moment. I think you have to find artists. And most stuff that is basically on the shelf that we can just go and easily access is just not my thing. But there are people like Thomas Feiner, who's Scandinavian. A lot of the stuff I like is very Scandinavian. He was also in a band called Exit North with Steve Jansen from Japan, and so it's that kind of I like a lot of that, a lot of the old school, like the Japan lot, like Richard Barbieri and No Man and Steve Wilson and all of those. It's all of that kind of what they now refer to as modern prog rock, whereas the reality is, I mean, if I don't like prog rock. I don't. I mean, as in, this is where Gaz and I are always going to argue. The 70s prog rock, the stuff that Gaz loves.
70s prog rock.
Yeah, yes. No, does nothing for me whatsoever.
Oh, it will one day.
No, okay, I believe you. But what's happened is there's a whole load of kind of early 80s lot that have kind of come through the ranks, and now they kind of call it the modern kind of prog rock, but the reality is it's not. It's music that doesn't just follow the norm. That's all it really is in terms of harmonically or structurally. Yeah. So a lot of that kind of No Man and Tim Bonus and Steve Wilson but Thomas Feiner at the moment is a particular. But other than that, it's a lot of those kind of mid 80s kind of ambient stuff, Cocteau Twins and This Mortal Coil and David Sylvian and you then get people like Craig Armstrong, for example, who, Craig Armstrong obviously did a lot of orchestral stuff in the late 90s, 2000s, and he combined this kind of orchestral and electronic stuff. Craig Armstrong still completely current, but mainly writing film scores. But again, I mean, he's a kind of genius, mainly in his simplicity. Which is, there's something to be said for, it's all right being really complicated, that's fine. But a lot of the time, there's a lot to be said for saying absolutely nothing. I mean, I studied when I was at uni and things, I studied John Cage and a lot of modern classical music in terms of, minimalist, Steve Reich, Philip Glass and Arvo Pärt and Goretzky and all of these people who basically make a whole thing of, it's kind of complicated, but it's kind of simple at the same time. Yes. That's my bag. It's
and a lot of use of texture, like Arvo Pärt, very textural.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think what I like about it is you have to have to do it well. You have to have a real knowledge, if that makes sense, to do it well. And it's almost like is one of those, the kind of music I like almost feels like the kind of music where you have to learn all the rules, every rule, and then you have to know which rules to break and which ones to stick with. But the reality is you have to, if you look at all of the best kind of minimalist composers or people who write very thin music, they really know how to write incredibly complex music, but they've made a conscious decision to not do that and to kind of hone it down to writing very simple music. And you can tell the difference between people that write that kind of music rather than people who don't really have a clue what they're doing. And the reason they're writing simple music is that's all they can do. Does that make sense? You can absolutely tell that difference, because there are plenty of people out there, and I'm not going to name any, who write, kind of ambient, simple music where I'm just screaming at them going, you're only doing that because that's all you can do. You can't think outside of that realm, because you've managed to find a few patches on the synth where if I hold down a fifth and put it through shimmer reverb, God, there we go again, shimmer reverb. If you put it down and hold it, you instantly get a track. I mean, that's crap. But then you'll get artists who will have a similar kind of effect, but it's done in a very thought out, processed, professional, musical way. And I mean, if that makes me a musical snob, then I'm the world's biggest musical snob, and I don't care.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's certain music which is incredibly simple, and you could turn around and go, why do people get away with this? But there's something beautiful about it, Yeah. And I think the thing is, for me, is the kind of music I genuinely like is, if you had to use one word, it is beautiful music. I like very small, intimate, thin, beautiful music.
So, Ty, moving forward, what have you got coming up? Anything you can share with us?
Well, the most important thing is right at this moment is to get the studios finished, up and running, and actually get away from my laptop and keyboard and actually get back into all my normal shenanigans. So that's first thing I need to sort out. And then I'm not taking time away from TV and film, but as you said, I took some of last year away from it, mainly just because I've kind of killed myself for 30 odd years doing it. And I think it's time to actually just do something a bit different. And then I've got 2 albums that I'm doing with Midge.
Yes, that's Midge.
Yeah. So that's basically it. It's just going to be more creative stuff, but doing slightly less on the TV and film stuff. And I think that the one good thing about this track is it's given me that kick up the bum to go, actually just write some music for yourself. I mean, I've already come up with a few new ideas since I did that track that I might go on to develop. And you never know, at some point I might actually do what I've threatened for forever and actually just release an album of my own stuff for the sake of it. I know. But I've been saying it for so many years now, but it'll happen. Maybe.
That's great. Well, thanks ever so much for taking time out to give us this wonderful insights into your track. And I'm sure we'll see you soon on great. Sonic Talk. Thanks very much, Ty.
Cheers, guys. Speak soon. Bye.
Wow. Ty, thank you so much for giving us such great insight into your wonderful track. Any closing thoughts?
I wouldn't say it was wonderful.
It was wonderful.
That was cheesy as fuck, mate.
What I say?
Any closing thoughts? Yeah.
What's something fucking cheesy?
This is better. Put this bit on.